Do you remember the simple, hearty meals that once filled Southern kitchens in the 1960s? Recipes that weren't fancy, but brought families together around the table with comfort and flavor. These forgotten dishes, from savory breakfasts to sweet treats, made everyday meals feel special with just a few humble ingredients. Today, we're taking a delicious trip back in time to rediscover 30 down home Southern recipes that deserve a place in your kitchen once again. Cornmeal mush with molasses. There was a time when a simple breakfast could feel like a warm hug on a chilly Southern morning, and cornmeal mush with molasses was that hug in edible form. In the 1960s, this humble dish was a staple for families who knew the value of stretching a few basic ingredients into something comforting and filling. Cornmeal, a pantry constant, transformed with a little water or milk into a soft, creamy mush, simmered slowly on the stovetop until it thickened into a golden, custardy slab. It wasn't fancy, but it had character, a texture that made each bite satisfying and familiar. The magic, of course, came with the molasses. Just a drizzle over the warm mush turned something modest into a sweet, rich treat. Dark amber syrup, mingling with the cornmeal in a way that reminded everyone at the table that even the simplest foods could carry a touch of indulgence. Families would gather, the aroma of toasted cornmeal curling into the air, children impatiently tapping their spoons while the mush cooled just enough to eat. It was cheap, it was filling, and it had the flavor of generations who knew that food was nourishment for both body and soul. Modern kitchens might scoff at mush as old-fashioned, favoring overnight oats or instant grits, but there's a reason it endured for decades. Cornmeal mush with molasses wasn't just breakfast, it was ingenuity at work. It took basic ingredients, cornmeal, water, or milk, a pinch of salt, and turned them into a ritual of comfort. Today, the dish might feel quaint or even quirky, but for those who remember or rediscover it, it's a taste of resilience, of family kitchens where frugality met creativity, and of mornings that began with warmth, sweetness, and the quiet knowledge that simple food can be extraordinary. Buttermilk biscuits with bacon drippings. In a 1960s Southern kitchen, the smell of buttermilk biscuits with bacon drippings baking in the oven was nothing short of sacred. These weren't the flaky, delicate biscuits you see in modern brunch spots. They were hearty, golden rounds that held the warmth and rhythm of a family breakfast. The magic began with the pantry basics: flour, a pinch of salt, a spoonful of baking powder, and tangy buttermilk. But the secret that gave these biscuits their soul was the bacon drippings, saved carefully from the skillet after crisping morning strips of pork. Stirred into the dough, the drippings added flavor, richness, and that unmistakable savory aroma that made the kitchen feel alive. The preparation was simple yet precise. The dough needed gentle handling, folded and pressed just enough to rise into soft, tender layers. Then came the ritual of the oven, preheated to the right warmth, biscuits sliding in to bake until their tops were golden and the edges crisped slightly. Families gathered around the table while the biscuits puffed and browned, and the first bites were always eaten hot, torn open, and sometimes smeared with a dab of butter or a drizzle of honey. It was frugal cooking at its best: minimal ingredients, no waste, and maximum reward in taste and satisfaction. Today, bacon drippings might be a forgotten staple in many pantries, replaced by butter or shortening, but there's something enduring about this old school approach. The biscuits weren't just food, they were a testament to resourcefulness, a little indulgence in a hardworking family's day, and a ritual that brought people together. Modern kitchens may favor convenience, but these biscuits remind us that when simple ingredients are treated with care, they become more than nourishment. They become memory, tradition, and a little slice of Southern comfort that lingers long after the meal is done. Sweet potato pancakes. Sweet potato pancakes were the kind of breakfast that carried the warmth of a Southern morning straight from the skillet to the table. In the 1960s, these pancakes were more than a meal. They were a clever way to stretch a staple root vegetable into something both hearty and comforting. Families who grew their own sweet potatoes or bought them in bulk knew their versatility. Mashed, mixed with a little little flour, eggs, and a touch of sugar or spice, they transformed into golden, tender pancakes with a natural sweetness that needed no syrup to shine. The preparation was straightforward but required a gentle hand. Mashed sweet potatoes were combined with pantry basics, creating a batter that was thick enough to hold together but soft enough to yield a delicate, almost custardy interior. Patted onto a hot, buttered griddle, each pancake sizzled, edges crisping, while the centers remained soft and flavorful. The aroma of sweet potato mingling with a hint of nutmeg or cinnamon often drew the family into the kitchen before the first batch was even finished. These pancakes were frugal, yet indulgent, a breakfast that could feed many with just a few humble ingredients. Sweet potato pancakes carried more than flavor. They carried memory. They reminded children of chilly mornings warmed by a cast iron skillet, of mothers and grandmothers who found joy in turning simple vegetables into comfort food, and of a culture where ingenuity met necessity in every meal. Today, they may seem quaint compared to protein-packed smoothies or instant oatmeal, but revisiting this dish offers more than nostalgia. It's a lesson in resourcefulness, a taste of history, and a reminder that even the humblest ingredients, treated with care and creativity, can transform a simple breakfast into something extraordinary. A sweet, golden bridge between past and present. Country ham and red-eye gravy. Country ham and red-eye gravy is a dish that could make a kitchen smell like Southern tradition in a single morning. In the 1960s, it was a breakfast, or sometimes a brunch, that carried both flavor and a sense of ritual. Country ham, cured and aged just long enough to develop its salty, savory punch, was sliced thin and fried in a hot skillet until the edges crisped and the fat rendered golden. The true Southern twist came from the pan drippings, which, mixed with the splash of strong black coffee, became the eponymous red-eye gravy, a thin, rich sauce that clung to the ham and made every bite unforgettable. Preparing it was deceptively simple. A cast iron skillet, the leftover coffee from the morning pot, and the ham itself were all that was needed. The coffee hit the hot drippings with a hiss, the aroma filling the kitchen, bold and earthy, while the ham sizzled in its own rendered fat. Served over soft biscuits or alongside grits, the dish combined salty, bitter, and savory notes in a way that made even the simplest breakfast feel elevated. For families who couldn't afford extravagant meals, this was a humble indulgence. A little ham, a splash of coffee, and a skillful hand-turned pantry staples into a dish worth savoring. Today, red-eye gravy may seem almost theatrical, a relic of a time when every flavor came from patience, skill, and thrift. Yet there's a reason it endures. It's more than food. It's a reminder of kitchens where resourcefulness met ritual, of mornings where the table drew family together, and of a culinary culture that prized bold flavors born from simplicity. In a world of instant breakfasts and pre-packaged gravies, country ham and red-eye gravy invites us to slow down, taste history, and rediscover the art of turning modest ingredients into a meal that lingers in memory long after the last bite. Grits with cheddar and chives. Grits with cheddar and chives were a breakfast staple that turned a simple Southern staple into a dish that felt indulgent without ever being extravagant. In the 1960s, grits were a canvas for creativity, a humble cornmeal porridge that could fill a family's table with warmth and comfort. Cooked slowly in water or milk until creamy and smooth, they absorbed the flavors stirred into them, from salty butter to sharp, tangy cheddar. A sprinkle of fresh chives added a bright, herby note that cut through the richness, giving each bite a subtle lift. The preparation was straightforward, though it required patience. Grits needed gentle attention over a low flame, stirred carefully to prevent lumps and to coax out their natural creaminess. Once cooked, shredded cheddar was folded in, melting into pot pockets of gooey goodness, while chopped chives scattered on top added color and a hint of freshness. Families would gather around the breakfast table, spoons in hand, savoring the creamy texture and savory flavor, appreciating that something so simple could be so satisfying. This dish carried more than taste. It carried memory. It spoke of kitchens where ingredients were limited but imagination was not, where the ritual of cooking was as important as the meal itself. Today, grits might be seen on upscale brunch menus or reinvented with fancy toppings, but the essence remains the same: comfort, warmth, and the subtle joy of a dish that has fed generations. Grits with cheddar and chives remind us that even the most modest ingredients, treated with care and creativity, can become a meal worth remembering, a small but enduring piece of Southern culinary heritage. Cornmeal mush with molasses. Cornmeal mush with molasses was a breakfast that carried the quiet magic of Southern mornings in the 1960s. Made from nothing more than cornmeal, water or milk, a pinch of salt, and a dash of sweetness, it was a dish that transformed simple pantry staples into something comforting and substantial. The cornmeal was cooked slowly, stirring patiently until it thickened into a soft, creamy porridge that could be sliced or spooned onto a plate. Its humble texture belied the depth of flavor waiting in the first bite. The crowning touch was the molasses, a dark, amber syrup with a richness that elevated the dish from basic to memorable. Drizzled generously over the hot mush, it soaked in slowly, creating a subtle sweetness that complemented the cornmeal's earthiness. Families often gathered around the table, the aroma of simmering cornmeal filling the air, children eagerly breaking off pieces while parents savored the warmth and simplicity. In an era when frugality was as much a part of cooking as taste, this dish exemplified resourcefulness, affordable, filling, and endlessly satisfying. Cornmeal mush with molasses wasn't just about sustenance, it was a lesson in patience, a reminder of kitchens where creativity and necessity met, and a small daily ritual that grounded households in comfort and tradition. Today, it may feel quaint next to protein-packed breakfasts or instant oatmeal packets, but revisiting this dish offers more than nostalgia. It reconnects us to the flavors, resilience, and ingenuity of Southern kitchens past, showing that even the most modest ingredients, given care and a touch of sweetness, can become a memorable start to the day. Buttermilk biscuits with bacon drippings. Buttermilk biscuits with bacon drippings were a cornerstone of 1960s Southern breakfasts, embodying both simplicity and soul. These biscuits weren't delicate, airy creations meant for fancy brunches. They were hearty, golden rounds that carried the warmth of a family kitchen straight from the oven to the table. The magic lay in the ingredients: flour, a pinch of salt, a touch of baking powder, tangy buttermilk, and, most importantly, bacon drippings, saved from frying breakfast pork. Stirred into the dough, the drippings added richness, savory depth, and that unmistakable aroma that could make a kitchen feel alive with anticipation. The preparation demanded gentle hands. The dough was folded carefully to create tender layers, pressed just enough to rise without becoming tough. Biscuits were baked until golden on top with slightly crisp edges and soft, fluffy centers. Families gathered around, drawn in by the smell, eager for the first bite, often torn open and smeared with butter or drizzled with honey. It was frugal cooking at its finest. Minimal ingredients, no waste, and maximum reward in taste and satisfaction. Today, bacon drippings may be an almost forgotten pantry staple, replaced by butter or shortening, but these biscuits remain timeless. They weren't just food. They were a testament to ingenuity, a little indulgence for hardworking households, and a ritual that brought family together. Even now, biting into a warm biscuit made with drippings is more than nourishment. It's a taste of history, a reminder that with care, simple ingredients can become extraordinary, and a celebration of the comforting, resourceful spirit of Southern kitchens. Sweet potato pancakes. Sweet potato pancakes were a beloved breakfast in the 1960s Southern kitchens, transforming a humble root vegetable into a dish that was both hearty and comforting. Families who grew or purchased sweet potatoes knew their versatility, using them in everything from pies to casseroles. For breakfast, mashed sweet potatoes were mixed with a little flour, eggs, and sometimes sugar or spice, creating a thick batter that could be scooped onto a hot skillet. As they cooked, the edges crisped lightly while the centers remained soft and tender, carrying a natural sweetness that made syrup optional. The preparation was simple but required attention. Gently folding the batter ensured the pancakes stayed light yet held their shape, while careful cooking coaxed out the flavors of the sweet potatoes. Nutmeg or cinnamon was sometimes added to elevate the flavor, giving the pancakes a warm, aromatic quality that filled the kitchen and drew family members to the table. Served with butter, a drizzle of honey, or just plain, they offered a filling start to the day with a touch of indulgence. Beyond taste, sweet potato pancakes carried nostalgia and resourcefulness. They represented kitchens where simple ingredients were transformed with care, where creativity met necessity, and where meals were both practical and joyful. Today, while breakfast trends lean towards smoothies or instant mixes, revisiting these pancakes offers a connection to a culinary past, a reminder that comfort and flavor often come from the simplest sources. Each bite is a taste of history, a celebration of Southern ingenuity, and a small, sweet piece of home. Country ham and red-eye gravy. Country ham with red-eye gravy was a breakfast that defined Southern mornings in the 1960s, a dish as bold in flavor as it was in tradition. The country ham, cured and aged to perfection, was sliced thin and fried in a skillet until the edges crisped and the fat rendered golden, filling the kitchen with a savory aroma that instantly signaled breakfast was ready. The red-eye gravy, made by deglazing the hot pan drippings with a splash of strong black coffee, added a tangy, slightly bitter counterpoint that clung to the ham in rich, flavorful streaks. The preparation was deceptively simple: a hot cast iron skillet, leftover morning coffee, and a little patience were all that were needed to transform basic ingredients into a meal that felt celebratory. Served over soft biscuits or beside creamy grits, the salty, savory ham and the coffee-infused gravy created a balance of flavors that delighted the senses. Families would gather, the clinking of plates and the aroma of breakfast blending into a ritual that marked the start of the day with warmth and connection. Today, red-eye gravy might seem unusual to modern palates accustomed to instant sauces and prepackaged breakfasts, but its enduring appeal lies in its simplicity and authenticity. It's more than a dish, it's a testament to the resourcefulness of Southern kitchens, a flavor that carries memory, and a reminder of mornings spent around the table, sharing food and conversation. Country ham with red-eye gravy invites us to slow down, savor tradition, and appreciate how even the simplest ingredients, treated with care, can produce a meal that is bold, comforting, and unforgettable. Grits with cheddar and chives. Grits with cheddar and chives were a staple of Southern breakfasts in the 1960s, a dish that turned a simple porridge into something creamy, savory, and satisfying. Grits made from coarsely ground corn were cooked slowly in water or milk until smooth and velvety, the process requiring patience and gentle stirring to achieve the perfect texture. Once creamy, shredded sharp cheddar was folded in, melting into pockets of gooey richness, while freshly chopped chives added a bright, herby note that cut through the cheese's depth and brought color to the plate. The preparation was humble but intentional. A low flame coaxed out the grit's natural creaminess, while careful folding of the cheddar ensured each bite carried a balance of flavor. Chives, often snipped from a backyard garden or local market, offered a subtle freshness that elevated the dish without overpowering it. Families would gather around the breakfast table, spoons ready, savoring the warmth, comfort, and quiet satisfaction of a meal made from pantry staples and a touch of care. Beyond its taste, grits with cheddar and chives embodied the spirit of Southern cooking, resourceful, comforting, and grounded in tradition. It represented kitchens where creativity creativity met necessity and where a simple dish could feed both body and soul. Today, grits may appear on upscale brunch menus or in modern iterations with fancy toppings, but the essence remains the same. This dish reminds us that modest ingredients, treated with care, can create a breakfast that is hearty, memorable, and deeply connected to Southern culinary heritage, a taste of history in every creamy, cheesy bite. Cornmeal mush with molasses. Cornmeal mush with molasses was a staple of Southern breakfasts in the 1960s, a dish that embodied simplicity, frugality, and comfort all in one. Made from just cornmeal, water or milk, a pinch of salt, and a generous drizzle of molasses, it transformed humble pantry ingredients into a warm, satisfying meal. The cornmeal was cooked slowly over the stove, stirred constantly until it thickened into a creamy custard-like porridge. Families often sliced it into squares once cooled slightly, then lightly fried it for a golden crust while keeping the interior soft and tender. The crowning touch of molasses brought depth and sweetness to the dish, soaking into the mush and adding a rich, caramel-like flavor. Kitchens would fill with its warm, earthy aroma, drawing children to the table and signaling the start of the day. In households where every ingredient was valued, cornmeal mush was a testament to resourcefulness, affordable, filling, and entirely satisfying without needing elaborate additions. This dish carried more than flavor. It carried memory. It spoke of mornings in modest kitchens, of hands carefully stirring pots, while stories and laughter floated in the air. It reflected a culture where frugality met creativity and where simple ingredients could create something nourishing, both for the body and the spirit. Today, cornmeal mush with molasses may feel quaint next to modern breakfast trends, but revisiting it is a reminder of Southern ingenuity, of comforting traditions passed down through generations, and of the quiet joy that comes from turning basic staples into a beloved morning ritual. Buttermilk biscuits with bacon drippings. Buttermilk biscuits with bacon drippings were a cornerstone of Southern breakfasts in the 1960s, offering a perfect blend of simplicity, flavor, and heart. These biscuits were not the delicate, airy types seen in modern brunch spots. They were hearty, golden rounds with a tender interior and slightly crisp edges. The secret lay in the ingredients: flour, a pinch of salt, baking powder, tangy buttermilk, and most importantly, bacon drippings saved from frying breakfast pork. The drippings added richness, a savory depth, and that irresistible aroma that made the kitchen feel alive and inviting. The preparation required a careful hand. The dough was gently folded to create tender layers, pressed just enough to rise without becoming tough, and baked until golden. As the biscuits puffed in the oven, the smell would draw the family to the table, eager for the first warm bite. Often eaten plain with a pat of butter or drizzled with honey, these biscuits were a small luxury born from frugality, a dish that made simple ingredients feel indulgent. Today, bacon drippings are nearly a lost art in kitchens, replaced by butter or shortening. But these biscuits endure as a symbol of Southern resourcefulness and comfort. They weren't just food, they were a ritual, a way to bring family together, and a reminder that the most satisfying meals often come from humble beginnings. Buttermilk biscuits with bacon drippings are more than a breakfast. They are a taste of history, a celebration of creativity, and a testament to the enduring warmth and flavor of Southern home cooking. Sweet potato pancakes. Sweet potato pancakes were a cherished breakfast in the 1960s Southern kitchens, turning a simple, humble vegetable into a dish both comforting and nourishing. Mashed sweet potatoes were combined with flour, eggs, and sometimes a touch of sugar or spice, creating a thick batter that cooked into golden, tender pancakes with a natural sweetness that required little more than a pat of butter. The pancakes offered a perfect balance: crisp edges, soft interiors, and a flavor that was earthy, slightly sweet, and deeply satisfying. Cooking them demanded a gentle hand and a patient eye. The batter was carefully spooned onto a hot grease skillet, and each pancake was cooked slowly to ensure the centers stayed soft while the edges crisped just right. A sprinkle of cinnamon or nutmeg was often added to heighten the warm, comforting aroma that filled kitchens and drew family members to the breakfast table. Served with butter, honey, or left plain, these pancakes were a modest indulgence that could feed a family with very little, yet leave everyone feeling satisfied. Beyond their taste, sweet potato pancakes were a testament to ingenuity and resourcefulness. They reflected a culture that valued frugality but didn't sacrifice flavor, turning ordinary ingredients into memorable meals. Today, while modern breakfasts may favor protein-packed shakes or instant oatmeal, revisiting these pancakes offers more than nostalgia. Each bite carries a connection to Southern culinary history, to kitchens where care and creativity transformed the simplest foods into comforting rituals, and to the enduring spirit of a cuisine that celebrated warmth, flavor, and family. Country ham and red-eye gravy. Country ham with red-eye gravy was a defining breakfast in the 1960s Southern kitchens, a dish that combined bold flavors with simple ingredients in a ritual that started the day with warmth and satisfaction. The country ham, cured and aged for a salty, savory punch, was sliced thin and fried in a hot skillet until the edges crisped and the fat rendered golden. What made the dish unforgettable, however, was the red-eye gravy. A splash of strong black coffee added to the hot pan drippings, creating a thin, richly flavored sauce that clung to the ham and intensified every bite. The preparation was straightforward but required attention. A cast iron skillet, leftover coffee, and the ham itself were all that was needed to transform these basic components into a meal that felt special. Served over soft biscuits or alongside creamy grits, the combination of salty ham and coffee-infused gravy delivered a harmony of flavors that could awaken the senses and fill the home with an unmistakable aroma. Families would gather around the table, spoons and knives at the ready, enjoying the simple pleasure of the breakfast rooted in tradition. Today, red-eye gravy may seem unusual to modern palates accustomed to pre-packaged sauces and quick breakfasts, yet its enduring appeal lies in its authenticity and resourcefulness. It represents kitchens where creativity met necessity, where a few quality ingredients were elevated by skill and care. Country ham and red-eye gravy is more than food. It's a reminder of Southern culinary heritage, of mornings spent together, and of the way simple, thoughtful cooking can turn modest ingredients into a meal both comforting and memorable. Grits with cheddar and chives. Grits with cheddar and chives were a beloved breakfast in the 1960s Southern kitchens, transforming a simple cornmeal porridge into a creamy, savory comfort food. The grits were cooked slowly over low heat, stirred constantly until they became smooth and velvety, a process that required patience but rewarded the cook with the perfect texture. Once creamy, shredded sharp cheddar was folded in, melting into the grits in pockets of gooey richness, while freshly chopped chives added a subtle, herby brightness that lifted the flavor and added a touch of color to the plate. The dish was simple in ingredients but rich in satisfaction. Families would gather around the breakfast table, drawn by the aroma of simmering grits and melting cheese, eager for the first warm spoonful. The combination of creamy corn, sharp cheddar, and fragrant chives created a balance of flavor and texture that was both comforting and memorable. It was a dish that filled bellies and brought a sense of home to the morning, proving that even the most modest ingredients could produce something special. Beyond taste, grits with cheddar and chives reflected the ingenuity and resourcefulness of Southern cooking. It was a reminder of kitchens where simple, affordable staples were transformed into meals full of flavor and heart. Today, while grits may appear on upscale brunch menus or in modern variations, the essence of the dish remains timeless. Each bite connects us to a culinary past, evoking the warmth of family kitchens, the care of generations, and the enduring comfort of a dish that is as humble as it is satisfying. Meatloaf with onion gravy. Meatloaf with onion gravy was a quintessential comfort food in 1960s 1960s Southern kitchens, a dish that brought families together around the dinner table with its hearty flavors and satisfying simplicity. Made from ground beef or a mix of meats, breadcrumbs, and a few pantry staples, the meatloaf was shaped into a loaf and baked until it was tender, juicy, and full of flavor. What set it apart, however, was the rich onion gravy that accompanied it, a sauce made by slowly caramelizing onions in the pan and combining them with meat drippings, broth, and a touch of seasoning to create a savory topping that soaked into every slice. Preparation was straightforward but deliberate. The onions required careful attention to develop their deep sweetness without burning, while the meatloaf needed to cook evenly, retaining moisture and absorbing the aromatic flavors from the gravy. Families would gather, drawn by the smell of caramelized onions mingling with sizzling meat, and the first cut into the loaf revealed the promise of a meal that was both filling and comforting. Served alongside mashed potatoes, buttered green beans, or simple biscuits, it was a dinner that satisfied both body and soul. Meatloaf with onion gravy reflected the resourcefulness of Southern home cooking, where frugality and flavor went hand in hand. It made the most of inexpensive ingredients while creating a sense of occasion at the family table. Today, while convenience foods dominate many kitchens, this dish remains a reminder of the value of slow, thoughtful cooking. Every slice carries warmth, nostalgia, and the comforting knowledge that sometimes the simplest meals, made with care and shared with loved ones, are the ones we remember most fondly. Oven-fried chicken. Oven-fried chicken was a 1960s Southern favorite that offered all the crispy, flavorful satisfaction of fried chicken without the mess or expense of deep frying. Families use this method to create golden, crunchy chicken with minimal oil, often coating pieces in a simple mix of flour, salt, pepper, and sometimes a hint of paprika or seasoning from the pantry. The chicken baked in the oven, its natural juices keeping it moist inside while the exterior crisp to a satisfying crunch, creating a dish that felt indulgent yet practical for busy households. Preparation required a balance of patience and care. The chicken needed to be evenly coated, placed on a baking sheet or in a shallow pan, and baked at just the right temperature to ensure the skin became crisp without drying out the meat. Occasionally, a drizzle of bacon fat or butter was added to the pan to enhance flavor and promote browning. The result was a dish that filled the kitchen with the unmistakable aroma of home-cooked chicken, a scent that drew families together at the table for a meal that was both comforting and substantial. Oven-fried chicken was more than a dinner. It was a lesson in resourcefulness. In an era when frugality was often necessary, this method turned modest ingredients into a satisfying main course, proving that careful technique could elevate simple food. Today, it may seem quaint compared to fast food fried chicken or air fryer versions, but revisiting this dish reminds us of the creativity and skill found in Southern kitchens. It's a taste of tradition, a celebration of home cooking, and a testament to the enduring appeal of crispy, flavorful chicken made with care, ingenuity, and a touch of nostalgia. Braised pork shoulder. Braised pork shoulder was a staple of 1960s Southern kitchens, a dish that turned an inexpensive cut of meat into a tender, flavorful centerpiece for the family table. The shoulder, often purchased on a budget, was slow cooked with simple ingredients: onions, garlic, a splash of broth or water, and occasionally a touch of vinegar or tomato to create a dish that was rich, savory, and deeply satisfying. The long, slow braise allowed the meat to break down, becoming melt-in-your-mouth tender while absorbing the flavors of the aromatics and seasonings. The preparation required patience but minimal effort. The pork was seared first to develop a deep caramelized crust, then covered and left to cook slowly, sometimes in a Dutch oven or heavy pot, until it was falling apart tender. The kitchen would fill with a fragrant aroma that spoke of home, warmth, and comfort. Families gathered around the table, pulling apart the meat with forks, often pairing it with mashed potatoes, collard greens, or cornbread to soak up the rich, savory juices. Braised pork shoulder reflected the resourcefulness and ingenuity of Southern home cooks, transforming a humble cut into a celebratory meal. In the 1960s, this dish exemplified the idea that frugality didn't mean sacrificing flavor. It meant making the most of what you had. Today, while faster cooking methods dominate, braised pork shoulder remains a timeless example of slow, thoughtful cooking. Each bite carries not just taste, but the history of kitchens where care, patience, and simple ingredients created meals that nourished both body and soul, leaving memories that linger long after the table has been cleared. Liver and onions. Liver and onions was a classic Southern dish in the 1960s, a meal born of frugality, but cherished for its bold, distinctive flavor. Liver, often beef or pork, was an inexpensive source of protein, while onions, sweet, caramelized, and abundant, added richness and depth to the dish. The combination turned a humble cut into a hearty, satisfying meal, one that carried the flavor of home kitchens where resourcefulness and skill transformed modest ingredients into something memorable. Preparation was straightforward but required careful timing. The liver was sliced thin, sometimes soaked in milk to mellow its strong flavor, then quickly pan-fried in a little fat until brown but still tender. Meanwhile, onions were slowly cooked in the same skillet until golden and sweet, their natural sugars balancing the earthy intensity of the liver. Once combined, the onions and liver created a harmony of taste, the savory richness of the meat, complemented by the mellowed sweetness of the onions. Families would gather at the table, drawn in by the sizzling sounds and aroma, ready to enjoy a meal that was both practical and comforting. Liver and onions reflected the ingenuity of Southern cooking, turning inexpensive cuts into dishes that were flavorful, filling, and nourishing. While it may seem old-fashioned to modern palates, this dish carried a sense of tradition and care, a reminder of kitchens where nothing went to waste and every ingredient was valued. Today, revisiting liver and onions offers not just a taste of history, but an appreciation for the creativity and resilience of cooks who could transform simple ingredients into meals that nourish both body and spirit. Shrimp and grits. Shrimp and grits was a beloved Southern dish in the 1960s, a meal that perfectly balanced simplicity, comfort, and coastal flavor. Originally a humble fisherman's breakfast along the Carolina coast, it combined locally caught shrimp with creamy, slow-cooked grits, creating a dish that was both hearty and flavorful. The grits, made from coarsely ground corn, were simmered until smooth and velvety, forming a soft bed for the tender, seasoned shrimp that were sautéed with butter, garlic, and sometimes a touch of paprika or black pepper. Preparation was simple but required attention to timing. The grits needed to cook slowly, absorbing liquid to achieve their signature creamy texture, while the shrimp were cooked just long enough to remain tender and succulent. Often, onions or bell peppers were added to the sauté for additional depth, and a drizzle of pan juices brought the dish together. Families would gather around the table, the aroma of buttered shrimp mingling with the comforting scent of warm grits, ready to enjoy a meal that was both practical and indulgent. Shrimp and grits reflected the resourcefulness of Southern kitchens, turning locally available ingredients into a dish that was nourishing and memorable. While today it may appear on upscale brunch menus with elaborate toppings, the heart of the dish remains unchanged. Creamy grits and flavorful shrimp, simple yet satisfying. It is a culinary reminder of the South's ability to take modest regional ingredients and transform them into meals that tell a story, connecting generations through taste, tradition, and a deep appreciation for the flavors of home. Cornbread with cracked corn. Cornbread with cracked corn was a cornerstone of 1960s Southern kitchens, a humble yet hearty bread that brought warmth and comfort to the family table. Unlike the finer, cake-like cornbread seen in some modern kitchens, this version featured coarsely ground corn, crack corn, that gave it a rustic texture and a nutty, earthy flavor. Made with simple ingredients like cornmeal, buttermilk, eggs, and a pinch of salt. It was baked in a cast iron skillet until golden and crisp on the outside with a tender, slightly crumbly interior. The preparation preparation was simple, but the results spoke of care and tradition. The batter was mixed gently to preserve the texture of the cracked corn, poured into a hot greased skillet, and baked until the edges browned and the aroma filled the kitchen. Families would gather, eager to tear off a warm piece, sometimes slathered with butter or honey, enjoying the subtle sweetness and hearty bite that only cracked corn could provide. It was a bread that could accompany nearly any meal: fried chicken, collard greens, or a simple bowl of beans, turning ordinary dinners into comforting feasts. Cornbread with cracked corn reflected the ingenuity and frugality of Southern cooking, making the most of inexpensive, readily available ingredients while creating something deeply satisfying. Today, it may seem quaint or rustic, but the dish endures as a symbol of tradition, resourcefulness, and flavor. Each bite connects us to kitchens of the past, where simple ingredients were transformed with care into food that nourished both body and spirit, proving that even the humblest bread can carry a legacy of warmth and home. Johnny cakes. Johnny cakes were a beloved staple of 1960s Southern kitchens, a simple cornmeal-based bread that traced its roots back to early American cooking. Made from a mixture of cornmeal, water, or milk, a pinch of salt, and occasionally a bit of sugar or fat, these flat, round cakes were cooked on a hot griddle or skillet until golden and lightly crisp on the edges. Despite their simplicity, Johnny cakes were hearty, filling, and deeply satisfying, a breakfast that could fuel a day's work or accompany a family meal without fuss or expense. The preparation was straightforward but required attention to heat and timing. The batter, thin enough to pour or scoop, was spread evenly on the griddle, cooking until the bottom set and the edges began to brown. A gentle flip revealed a golden surface, and the final cake had a slightly crunchy exterior with a tender, moist interior. Families would gather in the kitchen, drawn by the smell of toasting cornmeal, and enjoy Johnny cakes with butter, syrup, or alongside savory dishes such as fried eggs or bacon. Their versatility and simplicity made them a reliable choice in households of modest means. Johnny cakes were more than just food. They were a reflection of Southern ingenuity and resourcefulness. Using minimal ingredients, cooks could create a nourishing, comforting dish that became part of the rhythm of daily life. Today, they may seem quaint or old-fashioned, but their charm endures. Each bite carries the flavor of history, a reminder of kitchens where frugality met creativity, and of a time when simple, humble ingredients were transformed into meals that brought warmth, sustenance, and a quiet sense of home. Molasses bran muffins. Molasses bran muffins were a popular breakfast or snack in the 1960s Southern kitchens, a modest yet flavorful treat that combined the hearty texture of bran with the rich sweetness of molasses. These muffins were a clever way to use pantry staples, offering fiber and nutrition while satisfying the craving for a lightly sweet baked good. The deep amber hue of molasses lent the muffins a warm, earthy flavor, complementing the nutty, slightly coarse texture of the bran for a bite that was wholesome, satisfying, and surprisingly indulgent for such a simple recipe. The preparation was straightforward, requiring just a mixing bowl, a spoon, and a muffin tin. Bran flakes or bran cereal were combined with flour, sugar, baking soda, eggs, and molasses, sometimes with a touch of milk or butter to moisten the batter. The muffins were portioned into greased tins and baked until golden on top, filling the kitchen with a rich aroma that hinted at their warm, slightly sweet flavor. Families would gather for breakfast, after-school snacks, or a simple tea-time treat, enjoying the muffins plain or with a pat of butter. Molasses bran muffins exemplified the resourcefulness and practicality of Southern home cooking. They made the most of inexpensive ingredients while creating a snack that was nourishing, flavorful, and portable. Today, with the popularity of granola bars and packaged muffins, these old-fashioned treats may seem quaint, but they remain a reminder of a time when simple ingredients, treated treated with care and creativity, could become a wholesome and memorable part of everyday life. Each muffin carried not just flavor, but the warmth, ingenuity, and enduring spirit of home kitchens. Buttermilk drop biscuits. Buttermilk drop biscuits were a quick and comforting staple in 1960s Southern kitchens, perfect for busy mornings or simple family meals. Unlike traditional rolled biscuits, these were rustic and easy, just spoonfuls of a tender, tangy batter dropped directly onto a baking sheet or skillet. The combination of flour, baking powder, a pinch of salt, and tangy buttermilk created biscuits that were soft, fluffy, and slightly golden on top, with an interior that practically melted in the mouth. The preparation was effortless yet rewarding. The batter was mixed gently to avoid overworking the flour, preserving the light, airy texture. Spoonfuls were dropped onto the hot baking surface, leaving room for them to puff and bake evenly. As they cooked, the kitchen filled with the warm, inviting aroma of freshly baked bread, drawing family members to the table. Served plain with butter or alongside jam or honey, these biscuits were a quick indulgence that didn't require the extra work of rolling or cutting dough. Buttermilk drop biscuits reflected the ingenuity and practicality of Southern home cooking. They made use of simple, inexpensive ingredients to create a dish that was both satisfying and versatile. Today, while convenience foods dominate many breakfast tables, these biscuits remind us of the joy of simple, home-cooked fare. Each bite carries the warmth and nostalgia of a kitchen, where care and creativity turned minimal ingredients into something memorable, comforting, and entirely worth sharing with family. Sweet potato rolls. Sweet potato rolls were a cherished addition to Southern tables in the 1960s, offering a slightly sweet, tender bread that paired beautifully with hearty meals. Made with mashed sweet potatoes, flour, yeast, and a touch of sugar or butter, these rolls had a delicate, soft texture and a subtle sweetness that made them irresistible straight from the oven. Their golden orange hue hinted at the rich flavor inside, and they were often served warm, perfect for mopping up gravy or buttering for breakfast or dinner. The preparation required a bit of patience. The sweet potatoes were boiled or baked until tender, then mashed and incorporated into a yeasted dough. After kneading and allowing the dough to rise, portions were shaped into small rolls and baked until golden and lightly crisp on the edges. Kitchens would fill with the comforting aroma that made the wait worthwhile, and families would gather to enjoy the rolls fresh and warm, sometimes with a pat of butter or honey. The soft interior contrasted with the lightly browned exterior, creating a texture that was both satisfying and comforting. Sweet potato rolls reflected the resourcefulness and creativity of Southern home cooks who transformed humble ingredients into a bread that was both practical and indulgent. Today, while sweet rolls may be seen in cafes or as part of holiday spreads, revisiting this classic reminds us of the joy of home baking. Each roll carries a taste of history, a connection to kitchens where care and simple ingredients created warmth, comfort, and a shared sense of family, making every meal just a little more special. Sweet potato pie. Sweet potato pie was a beloved dessert in 1960s Southern kitchens, a dish that combined the natural sweetness of sweet potatoes with simple pantry ingredients to create a comforting, flavorful treat. Mashed sweet potatoes were blended with sugar, eggs, milk, and warm spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, and a touch of vanilla, forming a smooth, fragrant filling that was poured into a flaky, tender pie crust. Baked until the filling set and the edges of the crust turned golden, the pie offered a perfect balance of creamy texture, subtle sweetness, and aromatic spice. The preparation required care and patience. Sweet potatoes were boiled or baked until soft, then mashed and incorporated into the custard mixture, ensuring a silky consistency free of lumps. The crust was often handmade, flaky and buttery, providing a sturdy yet delicate base for the spiced filling. As the pie baked, the kitchen would fill with a warm, inviting aroma, signaling that dessert was ready. Families would gather, eagerly awaiting the first slice, sometimes served plain or with a dollop of whipped cream. Each bite bite, delivering a rich, comforting flavor that lingered long after the meal. Sweet potato pie reflected both tradition and resourcefulness. It turned a humble vegetable into a celebratory dish, showcasing the ingenuity of Southern cooks who relied on seasonal, affordable ingredients without sacrificing taste or satisfaction. Today, while pumpkin pie may dominate holiday tables, sweet potato pie remains a cherished symbol of Southern culinary heritage, a dessert that connects generations, evokes nostalgia, and celebrates the warmth and flavor of home-cooked desserts. Chess pie. Chess pie was a quintessential Southern dessert in the 1960s, known for its simple ingredients, rich flavor, and smooth custardy texture. Made from pantry staples, eggs, sugar, butter, a touch of cornmeal, and sometimes a splash of vinegar or lemon juice, chess pie was deceptively simple yet deeply satisfying. Baked in a single crust, the filling set to a golden, silky custard with a subtle sweetness that made each slice a perfect balance of creamy and tender, with a slight graininess from the cornmeal that gave it character. The preparation was straightforward but required care. Eggs and sugar were beaten together until light, then combined with butter and the small stabilizing touch of cornmeal and an acidic ingredient like vinegar or lemon juice. Poured into a prepared crust, the pie was baked until the filling was just set, with a golden top that hinted at its rich interior. Families would gather around the kitchen table, drawn by the sweet, buttery aroma, eager to taste a slice that could be enjoyed plain or sometimes topped with a dollop of whipped cream. Chess pie reflected the ingenuity of Southern home cooks who transformed modest ingredients into a dessert that felt indulgent and celebratory. Its longevity on Southern tables speaks to its comforting simplicity and timeless flavor. Today, while elaborate desserts may dominate modern bakeries, chess pie remains a symbol of home, tradition, and resourcefulness, proof that a few simple ingredients, treated with care and patience, can create a dessert that is both satisfying and unforgettable, carrying the warmth of kitchens past into the present. Banana pudding with vanilla wafers. Banana pudding with vanilla wafers was a beloved Southern dessert in the 1960s, a dish that combined simple ingredients into a creamy, layered treat, bursting with comfort and nostalgia. Slices of ripe bananas were nestled between layers of smooth, sweet vanilla pudding and crisp, buttery vanilla wafers, creating a delightful contrast of textures. The pudding soaked slightly into the wafers, softening them just enough, while the bananas added natural sweetness and a tender bite, resulting in a dessert that was both indulgent and homey. The preparation was straightforward but rewarding. Homemade or boxed pudding was prepared and allowed to cool slightly before being layered with alternating slices of banana and wafers in a deep dish. Often, a meringue topping or whipped cream crowned the dessert, baked lightly if meringue was used, creating a golden, airy finish. Families would gather, spoons ready, enjoying the sweet aroma and the soft, creamy layers that were as visually inviting as they were delicious. Each bite carried the comforting flavors of childhood kitchens and family gatherings, making it a staple for birthdays, holidays, and everyday treats alike. Banana pudding with vanilla wafers reflected the ingenuity and practicality of Southern cooking. It used modest, affordable ingredients to create a dessert that felt special, proving that simplicity could still delight and impress. Today, while desserts may feature complex techniques or exotic ingredients, this classic pudding endures as a reminder of resourceful kitchens, the joy of layering flavors and textures, and the enduring comfort of a sweet treat made with care, love, and a touch of Southern tradition. Choufle pie. Choufle pie was a beloved dessert in the 1960s Southern kitchens, particularly in Pennsylvania Dutch and Southern communities, known for its rich molasses flavor and simple, comforting ingredients. Made with a crumbly topping of brown sugar and flour over a sweet, molasses-infused filling, this pie offered a deep, caramel-like sweetness that contrasted with its tender, buttery crust. The name chouflé reportedly came from the need to shoo flies away from the sticky molasses topping while it cooled, adding a touch of charm and folklore to the dish. The preparation was straightforward but required care to achieve the perfect balance of textures. The filling combined molasses, sugar, eggs, and a bit of flour, poured into a pre-baked or partially baked crust, then topped with a crumb mixture that baked into a crisp golden layer. The pie emerged from the oven with a fragrant caramelized aroma, drawing family members to the kitchen for a taste. Served warm or at room temperature, chouflé pie was often enjoyed with a cup of coffee, its richness perfectly balanced by a simple beverage, or sometimes a dollop of whipped cream. Chouflé pie reflected the ingenuity of home cooks who could transform minimal, pantry-friendly ingredients into a dessert with character and depth. Its enduring appeal lies in its simplicity, resourcefulness, and comforting flavor, qualities that made it a staple in many homes. Today, chouflé pie remains a reminder of Southern and Pennsylvania Dutch culinary traditions, of kitchens where modest ingredients created memorable desserts, and of the sweet satisfaction that comes from humble, well-crafted baking. Buttermilk pound cake. Buttermilk pound cake was a classic Southern dessert in the 1960s, a simple yet indulgent treat that showcased the richness of home baking. Unlike lighter, airy cakes, this pound cake was dense and buttery, made with a pound or close to it of each main ingredient: butter, sugar, eggs, and flour, with the addition of tangy buttermilk to lend moisture and a subtle, pleasant tartness. The result was a golden, tender cake with a fine crumb that could be enjoyed plain, dusted with powdered sugar, or served with fruit and cream for a more celebratory touch. Preparation required careful mixing to achieve the perfect texture. Butter and sugar were creamed until light and fluffy, then eggs were added gradually before folding in flour and buttermilk. The batter was poured into a greased loaf or bundt pan and baked slowly, allowing the exterior to form a golden crust while the interior remained moist and tender. As it baked, the kitchen would fill with the comforting aroma of sweet butter and vanilla, drawing family members together in anticipation of the first slice. Buttermilk pound cake reflected the ingenuity and care of Southern home cooks, turning simple, pantry staple ingredients into a dessert that felt both indulgent and approachable. Today, while elaborate cakes and desserts dominate many tables, this classic pound cake endures as a symbol of tradition, comfort, and timeless flavor. Each slice carries the warmth of home kitchens past, a reminder that patience, care, and a few humble ingredients can create a dessert that nourishes both the body and the soul and leaves a lasting impression on family and friends alike. Thanks for taking this tasty trip through 30 forgotten down-home Southern recipes from the 1960s. From creamy grits to sweet potato pies, these dishes remind us that simple, heartfelt cooking never goes out of style. If you enjoyed this look back at classic Southern kitchens, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more delicious memories and culinary nostalgia. Which recipe are you excited to try first? Let us know in the comments.